Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back once again to Samuel Adams Returns, the Anti-Federalists. Yes, they did. They absolutely got it right. And even more so than maybe any other time. No, they just got it right all the time. So I just want to welcome you back here to Liberty Works Radio Network, and this is Tom Navolis, your host, and I'm just absolutely delighted that you're here again with me this week. We have a lot to cover. As always, it's just always so much to cover. It's true that we do not understand our historical foundations, and as a result, we see so much of the insanities, as I call them, because, well, I guess I take it back from insanity to the ridiculousness that's going on because people lack knowledge. And you know something? It's very clear in Scripture that when you lack knowledge, that bad things are going to happen. Stupid things happen. People make bad decisions, and as a result, they would rather have tyranny and despotism than what it means to understand the foundations of our liberties. So what was fun for me this week was that I had a great couple give me a call, super friends from Arizona, Francine and Dave Romsberg. They are great patriots, phenomenal folks. They lead the Glendale Tea Party, Glendale Patriot Group, Glendale Citizens Reform Group, whatever you want to call it, but they're very involved. They are involved in understanding what does it mean to bring to you, the citizenry, especially in that Phoenix area, what does it mean to educate you in foundational truths so that you can make really good decisions, so that you could be the participating citizen that our founders intended us, you, and me to be. So why did they call? And it wasn't really a social call. Actually, Francine called up and said, "Hey, Tom, I need your help." I go, "Oh, okay." I mean, it's been about 3 years since I have been down there. Cathy and I were down in the Phoenix area for quite a while. And during that period of time, I had the privilege to speak at their group as well as most of the groups in the state of Arizona as Samuel Adams, also presenting the Tale of Two Constitutions, that presentation, and what Francine was calling me about. What Francine called me about was Article 5. You know, 2 weeks ago they had this big meeting, one of the big meetings in down there in the Phoenix area on how the states are coming together for the Convention of States, trying to establish some framework around it, trying to establish some various aspects of what that is all about. So about in that 3 years ago, I did and I have a presentation on what is Article 5. And we're only going to talk about that briefly. I'm going to cover some key aspects from not a technical perspective, but I want to take you through what I believe that is critical to a convention of states. As we talked, it's very important that you understand that I absolutely believe in the mechanics of Article 5. I absolutely believe that that is a means and a method of taking and making corrections, as the Anti-Federalists absolutely said, to the ills of the Constitution. But, I'll tell you what, the purposes of Article 5 too often address nonsensical issues. And that's what I want to talk about today, are the nonsensical issues of, especially now, this Convention of States. I'm going to get into a few other things, but let me put something to you here very, very succinctly. Look, most of you know that I'm nothing but a citizen, okay? I'm still got that blank up behind me on my wall that does not have my JD. I'm not on any network TV. I don't run a big, massive nonprofit organization that has all of this great renown of the named organizations. I'm what you're supposed to be. I'm what every one of us was intended to be by the founders of this country. Informed citizens. Citizens that understood the Constitution. Citizens that could have the conversations about the language and original intent for self-governance. You see, ladies and gentlemen, what is very, very important to understand is that it is better to be an informed citizen than to be a person of great ranking and popularity. Okay? That's what's important. It's important for you and me to be able to understand how to operate within the context of our community, how to make that difference, how to govern. That's what's important. That's what our founders intended. That's what we are about as Americans. Ladies and gentlemen, what is very intent for us to understand is that we need to be citizens with clear understanding of how governance should operate. We are absolutely void of that in many, many regards. That's one of the reasons you have Liberty Works radio networks. That's one of the reasons that we are doing the Samuel Adams Center for Political Science, is so that we can take and, as a citizenry, recapture the way governance should function, starting with ourselves. So the important aspect of all of that is simple. What is self-governance? How do we function? How do we take and then develop into a society that agrees upon all of the fundamentals for governance? And one of the things that I would like you to look at, and I'm hoping again to, well, not again, but I'm hoping to get a gentleman on the program here, is David Welty. This is the book that he's put out, is The Unfaithful Guardians. This is absolutely a fabulous book. He just does some fabulous work in here, and I highly recommend that you go out and find it, as Unfaithful Guardians. And I have put in my references a link to his website so that you can get a copy of this book. What is important in here is that David takes, and probably more succinctly than myself or most others that I've heard that are supposed to be constitutional scholars, he succinctly takes and develops what is federalism. What does it mean to be that citizen, us as individuals that come together in society, give up some of our unalienable rights to form a state? And that's the first fundamental aspect of everything that we are in America, is that we form a state. That state, and this is what the convention in 87 did, 1787, the states then came together by representation, and they did form in that convention a new government. But the government is not of the people. It is, and David explains it extremely well in this book, that in the preamble, the original preamble lists every state by name. And it was the Committee on Style that went in and stated, "We the people." And as you well know, during the Virginia debate, it was Patrick Henry that said, where is it that they use that term, we the people? It's we the states. It is the states that come into this compact of the federal government. But what has happened is, by virtue of misinterpretation of the likes of the 14th Amendment, and as David well lays out, the misconstrued confusion in the court system as well, that has taken and restructured everything that the anti-federalists have warned about. And what we have today as a consolidated government, and the citizenry so confused. This is important as we talk about the Convention of States, is that the citizenry, the majority of the people, you that listen to this program and Liberty Works Radio Network and all of the, maybe, and not even those that listen to Fox and all of the other so-called conservative pundits, understand this core principle. Get this one. And this is why one of the reasons I'm against the Convention of States. The people are not sufficiently educated in understanding the concepts of federalism and the fact that the only reason we have a runaway government is because we're stupid. We're stupid. We don't know what our founders intended. We do not understand the truths and principles of federalism, and that it is a limited federal government by virtue of what the Constitution construct as that framework is all about. So we're going to talk about we the people, especially as we come back into that next segment here in a moment or two. But it's important to summarize where we're at right now. The summary being, in particular, is that we, the people, the majority, and we see it in the streets every day. You know, I put a post up on Twitter, a tweet on Twitter, not a post, but a tweet on Twitter that basically says is that with the Democratic ilk or minions, the Democratic minions that are taking and defacing Thomas Jefferson's statue at the University of Virginia, the Democrats are now refusing, they're rejecting Thomas Jefferson as the patriarch of the Democratic Party. And now they are accepting Karl Marx, Karl Marx, as their elder. Ladies and gentlemen, that's what we have going on. We have more than a third. We have more than a third of the population here in our beloved United States. It pains me. We have the greater majority that are so stupid relative to Americanism. I'm going to go back as I point to that vacant place here on my wall in the library about not having a JD from the University of Virginia, but that JD from the University of Virginia is something, again, from, 1825. I'm going to refresh your memory in this next coming segment, or the last segment, as to what we as a people are supposed to be inculcated in, so that we know exactly what we should be learning and have an understanding of as Americanism. We need to understand that. We need to understand how critical it is for us to form our knowledge of us as a people so that we can see exactly who we are, and then we can hold and develop and then hold our elected accountable. Ladies and gentlemen, that's the real issue, is we have not trained people in our form of government and constitutionalism to the extent that we're corrupt. So as we look at that in the next segment, come on back when Samuel Adams returns, because the Anti-Federalists, yes, they did. They got it right here on Liberty Works Radio Network. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back once again to this second segment of Samuel Adams Returns. The Anti-Federalists, they absolutely did. They got it right here on Liberty Works Radio Network. And you know what? Where Liberty works for you, as I always say, this is a great network. This is a network that really, listener funded. Folks, come on. Take a look at what else is going on all week long, even over the weekend. It's got some really great programming. It has local programming in the Maryland market. It touches down into Tennessee, West Virginia. I mean, we reach all over the place, but only because of you. You help and make the network work. Listener funded, that's what it is. No big dollars coming in here. And, as I always say, it's by the grace of God that I'm here with you today and all the time here on Liberty Works Radio Network. And as we think about you, what we're talking about is you having the knowledge of what needs to be accomplished as we get into what is this on this convention of states. And I tell you, I left it off in the last segment, just kind of a little bit of a review, is that the majority of people just are not smart enough to understand what governance is all about in this country. The Anti-Federalists, they did get it right when they talked about a consolidated government and the fears of what could happen when we do not have moral and virtuous leaders. So I'm not going to get into the mechanics of Article 5. I'm not going to get into all of these other arguments of Article 5. I mean, there's a lot of good stuff out there. You can go to the Convention of States website and you can see their argument and their counter arguments. You could go to John Bircher's. You can go to Phyllis Schlafly's old information. You can go to a lot of different places for that mechanical debate. Okay, I mean, I was just looking today. I got in from News with Views, is why states can't prevent a runaway convention. Very interesting argument. I mean, they go all the way back to why Madison and all of those argued for the Convention of 87 being a valid convention, even though the states sent delegates with specific charges to only amend. So I don't even want to get into all of that. What I would like to get into are several things that I think that are critical from John Adams' perspective, not even Sam Adams' perspective, because Sam Adams was anti-federalist from day one. As a matter of fact, Massachusetts had to take in their deliberations, when you read the deliberations of their convention regarding taking and accepting the Constitution, they had to go to Sam Adams with a final determination that there would be a Bill of Rights. And although Hamilton argued that you really didn't need a Bill of Rights because, the idea is, from the last segment, is they understood federalism. And their assumption with Madison and Hamilton was that the federal government had nothing to do with the states in regards to the general rights of the individual. So this goes to the preamble being misconstrued that the federal Constitution is individually pointed. It's not, because people don't understand original intent. I keep putting that hashtag up there, and I know nobody looks at it on Twitter, is hashtag Founders Original Intent. because it comes down to what David Welty is saying here in his book, is that federalism and the way that the Constitution is absolutely designed by the definitions of the terms of the day is that Hamilton should be right, that we really didn't need a Bill of Rights in the federal Constitution to the extent that the states are the very fundamentals of governance for us as individuals. But, we get David here and have him explain all of that as we get into that conversation. But I want to set that as a framework, is that the federal government does not have the rights to do a lot of what it's doing. So the Convention of States says, well, we have this runaway Congress. We have this runaway this runaway. Well, you can't address with the whatever is called a runaway with the whole perspective of this convention of states with a balanced budget convention, because if you have congressmen and you have judges, and even more importantly, you have bureaucrats that do not understand founders' original intent, guess what? They don't care. They do not give a rip about a balanced budget. They'll find a way around it. So I think, quite frankly, and I'm going to get into why I think this, is that it is absolutely nonsensical, a great waste of time, energy, and financial resources to be running around and doing everything that, I don't know these people personally. Actually, I met some of them, and they're really nice people that are trying to do some of this stuff. I mean, they really are. They have some really good intentions. But their intentions and some of the people that are backing them in their intentions are not valid for what needs to be done. You see, because here's the real crux of it. The real crux is we don't have what John Adams is talking about in a moral and virtuous people. So let me take you through a couple things here. John Adams wrote to Abigail in 75 is that a constitution of government once changed from freedom can never be restored. Liberty once lost is lost forever. Okay? So we've seen that. What we've seen in the amendment process, I don't care if you can go look at the amendments on alcohol and see that that was a liberty lost, and it was a fight to get that back, an absolute battle to say, you know what, that wasn't the right of the federal government to say that if the states want, and a city in a local area wants to take and determine that people, it should be dry, then that's up to them. Some of the things that he talked about that I think on liberty, and this is where people don't understand liberty. Here it is. To Thomas Jefferson, I'm amazed at this interaction. Once again, I have to bring this up, is that the general principles on which the fathers achieved independence were the general principles of Christianity, in which all those sects, those different denominations, were united. Okay? That's critical. We do not even have that in the Christian domain, is the united under the general principles of Christianity. We have the social gospel that is so divisive in America that you don't have the same mind amongst Christians. And then, as I talked about last week, is the Barna report shows that even the conservative pastors just refuse to talk about these issues. So how can you have moral and religious people, moral and virtuous people that can govern when we don't even deal with it and talk about? So he talks about the general principles of Christianity in which all those sects were united, and the general principles of the English and American liberty in which all the young men united. and which had united all parties in America in majority sufficient to assert and maintain her independence. I'm going to leave the quote there for a minute because, you see, this is the problem. We do not have a common-minded, united people, even in what it is for religion in our nation, let alone how to know that definition of morality. We hear it all the time from all of the talking heads on the Communist News Network, or is it the Clinton News Network, whatever, and all of these other named pieces of minion, socialist, globalist nonsense, is the fact that, you know what? They're destroying what we should be united in. And they're calling out and saying that, you know, our president is immoral. Where did they get their sense of morality? That morality and that sense of common morality is not here from the general principles of Christianity to which John Adams was talking about. So we should be spending time, and I'm going to come back to this again. We should be spending time changing and grabbing back our educational system because, ladies and gentlemen, we have not produced, except for a few out there, which went out on their own to get it, like you and me, to be the citizens that can come together in a united mind. The general population is not united. They are not in the same moral framework. You even have the divisiveness between all of these different religious denominations, some that are pro-homosexual, pro-sodomy, pro-abortion, pro-everything that the founders found immoral. So the morality of commonality in America is not where it was at the foundation of this nation, and it was driven today by the educational system over the last 100 years. Okay? Grab that one very solidly. Educational system over the last 100 years. So instead of spending the hundreds of thousands of dollars that all of these Convention of States people are doing, instead of going out there and, you know, making all of this noise, why not do what's really necessary and help develop this common ground, these general principles that even the young men come united under, so that then we can have a moral and religious people. To the extent that then what we're doing is we are taking and we're developing those candidates. And that's what we need to do. We need to develop and then vet the candidates in such a manner that they understand the general principles of what John Adams was talking about to Thomas Jefferson, and that they understand the language of Founders' original intent, hashtag Founders' original intent, to the degree then that they can know how to self-govern and then come in and govern in the framework of our guaranteed Republican format of government, and take and understand federalism in the separation of states and the federal government. Most of everything that everybody whines about on the pro-Convention of State folks, they whine about because we don't have the moral determination to do it legislatively. We have elected, for the last 80 years in particular, those that do not understand constitutionalism. So really, when we get down to it, it comes to that very interesting framework, as I talk about in The Tale of Two Constitutions, from covenant to this present Constitution, is the fact and reality. We have a beautiful framework. We just don't know how to legislate within the concept of that framework. And as a result, we have people, by virtue of the corrupt and perverse educational system, even at the collegiate level where it is absolutely despicable, is there what we have are people that don't understand constitutionalism, as Samuel Adams did. And absolutely, as Samuel Adams said, hey, the Anti-Federalists, they got it right. So come on back into the next segment as we close this out on the Convention of States. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back once again to Samuel Adams Returns, the Anti-Federalist. Absolutely got it right here on Liberty Works Radio Network, and this is Tom Novolis, your host. And wow, you're still hanging here with me. I'm pretty impressed that there's still some folks out there that are listening. I hope you are. I hope you're still with me as I challenge not the mechanics of Article 5, not the mechanics of all of the arguments that have been going back and forth on whether, you can do this, you can do that. Oh, if we put into our legislative nature, all of these restrictions and we spank people and we charge them with felonies and blah, 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 blah. Yeah, I'm not challenging any of that. But, I am saying that to go and look at this idea of a balanced budget, I think is absolutely stupid because, when you have bureaucrats and you have unintelligent elected officials, and what I mean by that is they do not understand, again, hashtag founders' original intent, when they do not understand that, then you know what? They're going to find a way around balancing the budget. Because the simple thing is cut your costs. Come on, you do that at home. Those are the simple things. But it comes to this. It comes to what John Adams says here. He was writing a letter to Thomas Jefferson, 13 November, 1815. He goes, we may appeal to every page of history we have hitherto turned over for proofs irrefutable that the people, when they have been unchecked, have been as unjust, tyrannical, brutal, barbarous, and cruel as any king or senate possessed of uncontrolled power. All projects of government formed upon the suppositions of continual vigilance, sagacity, and virtue, firmness of the people, when possessed of the exercise of supreme power, are cheats and delusions. The fundamental article of my political creed is that despotism or unlimited sovereignty or absolute power is the same in a majority of a popular assembly as aristocratical council or oligarchical junta and a single emperor. Equally arbitrary, cruel, bloody, in every respect diabolical. That's really interesting, ladies and gentlemen, because when we start taking and looking at, what is happening in our governments and all the injustice that people scream about, and will a balanced budget take out all of this arbitrary power of the Supreme Court? Will it take out all of the corruption and the despotism, the usurpation, the insanities that are happening in Congress, and more so in the bureaucracies? Because remember, when Congress writes these laws, they give this little framework, but then it goes off to the bureaucrats that do what? They take and all of a sudden say, oh, we're really smart and we really think and understand exactly what Congress is saying, so you know what we're going to do? We're going to take and we're going to write all these rules and regulations that then become part of law, so that now we can go ahead and we can send our, our EPA cops after people. We can send our IRS cops after people. We can send even, did you know that I was looking some stuff up. Did you know that the Federal Reserve has a law enforcement arm? And it's interesting that, anyway, I'm not going to get into that here. That's in the book about, they have to swear an oath because they can get all the stuff that anybody else in law enforcement ends up getting and so on and so forth. So where I'm trying to rally you back to an understanding of, ladies and gentlemen, is the fact that a convention of states has been, for the last 4 years, a gross waste of money, time, and energy, because it's not going to fix a single thing. In my simple, again, I'm not one of these real smart guys that's running around out there. I don't have TV programs. I don't have the major radio. I don't even have, the PhDs that all of these folks want. No, I'm you. I'm what our founders intended, is an educated citizen. That's why I always talk about, you know what? You want to start somewhere? Start with Stansbury, 1828, the Catechism on the Constitution. All right, I'll put the link up there. I haven't finished rewriting it because it's not up to date relative to where the Constitution is in its format to date. But go back to 1828, because at that time it was a challenge to even understand how it was functioning. Because, as I bring out in the Tale of Two Constitutions, things were already changing. Supreme Court was doing different things. I mean, my friend, David Welty brings it out in his book. But what we have to come back to is that we do not have people of a united mind. We don't even have the churches united. It's what I talked about over the last several years of being on this program. What brought us to that defining moment, and I was really impressed that Donald Trump used it in his UN speech this week. Oh, no, okay, now I got to go find that quote from John Adams about, it wasn't the revolution as a war. It wasn't the revolution as a war that set in place, in mind, in essence, who we were as a people. What was the revolution? No, the revolution was in the minds of the people. And what helped establish that revolution being in the minds of the people, I'm trying to get the exact quote, I just paraphrased it for you. What set that was nothing other than the First Great Awakening. So that's a whole nother story on what was going on with the churches and the different denominations. But John Adams, in the first quote that I mentioned to you, well, it wasn't the first, but it was the second quote that I mentioned to you, is that we were of a common mind. Even the churches, the young men, everyone became of that common mind, to the extent that, we were able to stand on Founders' intent for liberty. So here it is. Here is this letter that he wrote to Jefferson. It was in July of 1814. What do we mean by the revolution? The war? That was no part of the revolution. It was only an effect and consequence of it. The revolution was in the minds of the people, and this was effected from 1760 to 1775. So where he wraps that in, in the course of 15 years, before a drop of blood was shed at Lexington, if the Christian religion, as I understand it, or as you understand it, should maintain its ground, as I believe it will, yet Platonic, Pythagorean, Hindu, and Kabbalist Christianity, which is Catholic Christianity, and which has prevailed for 1,500 years, has received a mortal wound, of which the monster must finally die. Yet so strong is his constitution that he may endure for centuries before he expires. But the real point is that the Christian religion, as he talked about at the beginning here, in those general principles of which our fathers achieved independence, the general principles of Christianity in which all those sects were united, and the general principles of English and American liberty in which all those young men united, which had united all parties in America. We don't have that. You know what? I would recommend that all of you that are, in my opinion, as a simple citizen, wasting your time on trying to do a convention of states, if you went and did this, if you went and did exactly this resolution, resolved that is the opinion of this board, which was at the University of Virginia in 1825, that it is the opinion of this board that as to the general principles of liberty and the rights of man in nature and in society, the doctrines of Locke, in his essays concerning true original extent and end of civil government, and of Sidney, which I talk about. I've read Sidney and I've read Locke, and I've read them over and over and over again. In his discourse, Sidney's discourse on government may be considered as those generally approved by the fellow citizens of this and the United States, and that on this distinctive principles of government of our state and of the United States, the best guides to be found in, 1, the Declaration of Independence as a fundamental act of union of these states. Okay, Declaration of Independence, number 1. 2, the book known by the title The Federalist, and I always say you got to read the Anti-Federalist as well, but The Federalist, being an authority to which appeal is habitually made by all and rarely declined or denied by any as evidence of the general opinion of those who framed and of those who accepted the Constitution of the United States on questions as to its genuine meaning. Okay? 3, the resolution of the General Assembly of Virginia in 1799 on the subject of the alien and sedition laws, which appeared to accord with the predominant sense of the people of the United States. And that's real interesting when you talk about immigration and some other stuff, the alien sedition laws. Okay? 4, the valedictoria address of President Washington as conveying political lessons in peculiar value. And what they mean by that valedictory address is George Washington's farewell address. And that in the branch of the School of Law, which is to treat on the subject of civil polity, these shall be used as the text and documents of the school. But in the beginning, the opening paragraph is, whereas it is the duty of the board of the government under which it lives, and especially to that which this university is immediate creation, to pay special attention to the principles of government which shall be inculcated therein, and to provide that none shall be inculcated which are incompatible with those on which the Constitution of the States and the United States are genuinely based in common opinion. So we had that on common opinion. So you know what? Instead of wasting all of that money, let's retake our educational system back. Let's inculcate our students, our young men. And it says, shall. Every student shall be inculcated in these principles. Wow. You know, if we can't raise up that next generation of policymakers, both in government and in business, if we can't raise up that next generation of political leaders, church leaders that understand these principles, then, ladies and gentlemen, there's not a single amendment for balancing the budget that's going to make a hill of beans. It's not going to make a difference. So, folks, I'm sorry to say, from this simple citizen's opinion, is that you're wasting your time and money. Go take back our youth and educate all, and inculcate with these fundamental principles and truths so that you can elect your congressmen and get your senators in, change out the bureaucracy with people that understand hashtag Founders' original intent. So come on back next week when Samuel Adams, who understood it and believed on these principles, yes, with the Anti-Federalists, they got it right here on Liberty Works Radio Network, where liberty works for you.